solutions. Okay. So we have points plotted. It's first question I did. By the way, anyone out of interest read this? We are going to have to do column vectors and such. Write A to B as a column vector. Can you see where the 6 minus 2 comes from?
Yeah. No. Wait, I see where the 6 comes from. Yeah. I don't.
It's just like rise and run, only in the other order. So the 6 comes from the fact that you would move 6 in the x direction and minus 2 in the y direction. So we could think of it as, well, that's the run and that's the rise.
What?
Well, we're not actually doing run divided by rise, so gradient is rise over run, but we could use that information, for instance, to help us work out the gradient of line AB. Okay, because right, if the gradient of line AB uses rise over run, okay, if we'd have had to have done part A ourselves, we'd have thought, oh, therefore it's minus 2 divided by 6, which is minus 1/3.
I wrote 1/3.
Now, of course, if that's why I didn't just delete that question. I left it in, but I did it for you, just in case you did spot it. But anyway, the line AB, okay, you should also be able to do the gradient in the same way, rise and run. You'd have done in exactly the same way. All right. Find the equation of line AB in the form y equals mx plus c. So you are given it in that way. So there are ways to do it. Would anyone like to specify? So there's point slope form, or there's just going straight for mx plus c. Which way would you like?
Straight from mx plus c.
So the mx plus c way, straight away. Okay, so I would go y equals, what's the n?
Gradient.
Gradient, so it's minus a third, so minus 1 over 3 x. Sorry, I'm just going to write minus a third because it's bugging me. Right, and then it's plus something. How do we work out the plus something?
Where it hits the y.
Okay. So you could, I guess, if you wanted to, draw, as long as you were very careful. You could extend your line. Now we need to check, for instance, that it is, if I'm going backwards, across 3 up 1, across 3 up 1, and I have to be across 3 up 1, it has to maintain that path. So if you did a line with your ruler and it was a little bit squiggly, you might be off.
Squiggly.
Okay, but yeah, so that would work. Plus 5.
What's the other way? So that's right?
Yeah.
That's it?
That is perfectly acceptable.
You get the 1/3. 1/3 for the minus 1.
Yeah, you get 1 mark for stating the gradient, 1 mark for doing the plus 5. Now, just to go through it, if we didn't use that method, I know, for instance, that there are 2 points at 3, 4 and 9, 2. Okay, so just so we can do it, so point A was at 3, 4, and point B was at 9, 2. So just in case we weren't able to draw the line, and we had got as far as doing y equals minus 1 over 3x plus c, what do we do now? So substitute in, don't we? So remember, which one do you want to use?
A.
I'll probably use A. X and Y. The reason why, just easy number, so I'd put the 4 goes where the Y is. So 4 equals minus 1 over 3 times 3.
Oh, that's what I did.
Plus something good. So 4 is minus a third times 3.
That's 1.
Minus 1 plus what? So minus 1 plus what makes 4? 5. So C would have to equal 5 again, same thing. Okay?
Can I just write that down?
Yeah. Don't forget it's being recorded. You can review this afterwards. Another way, I might as well go through it as well. Point slope form, if we did y2 minus y1 equals n times x2 minus x1. Remember, I can use either of the two to pick one coordinate. I'll pick the same one again. Actually, no, I'm not. I'm going to pick the other one to show that we would have still got the same answer. Let's pick this one. So we've got y2. I'm just going to put y minus. y1 is 2 equals n is minus 1 over 3 times x minus 9. Okay. Then I simplify. So minus 1 over 3x, that looks alright. And then minus, well, that would be plus 3. Minus a third times minus 9. You happy with plus 3? Which if I then added 2 to both sides, I'd end up with y equals, so I'm just going to add 2. Write that down. Y equals minus a third x plus 5. Get the same answer. So you've got 1 method, 2 methods, 3 methods, whichever one. So this, what was this? Extend the line, wasn't it? But I'm happy to print this out for you afterwards if you want. If you want to just follow it through, mark yours rather than write it all down. Probably better, actually. Just mark yours. We'll write this down and then you can have a copy. Alright. The equation of the line, 5y plus 2x plus 20 is 0. Find the gradient of the line. Well, we've got to rearrange it first. So I'm going to do 5y plus 2x plus 20 is 0. So to start with, I'm going to keep the y positive. So I'm going to do 5y plus 2x is minus 20. Because I've subtracted the 20. Okay, and then I'm going to minus the 2x. So 5y is minus 2x minus 20. So I'll just write it down. I've minus 20 and I've minus 2x. So I've got that. And then I need to divide by 5. So I'm going to write that up here and go, it's y equals minus 2x minus 20, all divided by 5. Which we can do is minus 2 over 5. Minus 20 over 5 is 4. But actually, I don't care about that bit. All I want to know is the gradient, which is minus 2 over 5. Right, just to say, remember what I said about your own little chats. Minus 2 over 5 is the same as minus 2 over 5 is the same as 2 over minus 5, as long as there's only one negative involved.
If you still have that somewhere on the line, can you still take that?
What do you mean?
It's where? Yeah. The equation.
Well, it's a good point. What I would say is, because it's 1 mark, in this case, I would suggest they are specifically asking for the gradient. Therefore, if you haven't specified the gradient, so for instance, if you put that whole equation, actually I should have an explanation. If you put the whole equation, you've not shown you know what the gradient is. If you've written, by the way, if you've written minus 2 over 5x, you also don't really know what the gradient value is. You would lose that because it's only 1 mark. So it must be just the minus 2 over 5. Do you all understand why?
Yeah.
Okay. Find the coordinates of the point where the L line crosses the y-axis. Well, when it crosses the y-axis, okay, we know one thing, which means that the x-coordinate has to be 0. And we want to know what the y-coordinate is. So what we could do is, using this equation, do what is y when x is 0. So minus 2 over 5 times 0 minus 4. Well, obviously the answer is going to be minus 4, which is why actually the minus 4 is just what the y-intercept is. But the coordinates, that's why I underlined it, which wasn't in there in the normal question. The coordinates must be stated as 0 minus 4.
I have like minus 4. I had 0.
Yeah. But you must, by the way, because again it's only worth 1 mark, you must specify the coordinates. It's 0 minus 4. Now they've made it nicer for you in this question because they've given you a space to remind you. Sometimes they don't give you 2 holes to fit numbers in. And a lot of people would just write y equals minus 4 and not get the answer, not get the mark. Okay? Pretty nice. Right? Right. So this is the one where people were... So, it's a perpendicular line. Yeah.
Yeah. So that means I have a F.
So, if line L is minus 1 over 4x minus 4, okay, perpendicular means something to do with the gradient. Yes. So the gradient will be 4 over 1. It is negative here, so it must be positive, and it's 4 over 1, or just 4. Okay. So that means we have an equation, y equals 4x. Now, there are follow-throughs. So if your part A, B, whatever was minus 1 over 2, or it was 4 minus 4, you get these marks if you took your gradient from before and did the correct negative reciprocal. Well, so you have to do, if it was negative, it's now positive, and then flip it upside down is, I guess, the simplistic way of saying it. But, what do you mean?
Where did the 1 over 4 come from?
From part A.
I thought we got 2 over 5. I got 2.
Sorry, am I? Oh, sorry, yeah.
I was like, where did that come from?
Good job, I'm thinking of something different. Yeah, very sorry. But the same applies. So what was it? Negative. There you go. Good job, you checked. So that means it should be 5 over 2.
Yeah.
Yeah. So for instance, if you wrote y equals negative 5 over 2x before, what would your answer here be? 2 over 5. So you get follow-through marks as long as you did. But the thing then is, you also get follow-through marks for the plus c. Okay. The c has to be right for your gradient. So for instance, if I've got 5 over 2x, I know there's a point 23. That means when x is 2, y is 3. So I do 3 equals 5 over 2 times 2 plus something. 5 over 2 times 2 is 5. So therefore, c must be minus 2. So my equation would be y equals 5 over 2x minus 2. However, if you don't have 5 over 2x, 5 over 2 is the gradient, you shouldn't get minus 2 as your plus c. You should have something different. So, I guess what we'll need to do is you need to check. So I could, but could you get your neighbour maybe to check what you've done?
If you did y2 minus y1.
For those marks, you'll notice there are 3 marks. Okay, so you can have 1 mark for the gradient being the correct version compared to your part A. Alright? There is 1 mark out of the 3 for stating this. So putting the 3 for the y and the 2 for the x. And then there is 1 mark for getting the correct value of c. So for instance, if you wrote +2 instead of -2, you would have got 2 out of 3 marks. Okay. Yeah? So you can see how it's actually quite involved. If you get a question wrong, it's harder to mark it because I would still go through it and go, is there follow-through marks that I can give you? Alright. Now, I did write for this question, if you need to, put it into your calculator. Now, actually, being a non-calculator question, you wouldn't be allowed to do that. Okay. Yes, because I added that in. Normally, however, this would be a non-calculator question. Right? So what I've done is because I don't want to set at the moment a non-calculated bit and a calculated bit, I would encourage you to use your calculator if you need to. So what I thought you would do there is if you couldn't figure it out, you would just put these in as y equals and see what shape came up. Right? However, what we ought to be able to do is we know that these two are linear, so y equals mx plus c, y equals mx plus c. This one, it should have a negative value for m. This one should have a positive value for m. This one should be a c in the positive sense. This one, c should be 0, so plus nothing, because it goes through. So this is how we're analysing it. So if we think about it, the ones that I can use are this one, this one, this one, and this one. So if we look at the first one, has to have positive m, positive c. So actually, it has to be this one. So graph A has to be 2x plus 3. And the other one has to have a plus 0, and the only one with that is this one. So B has to be minus 3x. Is that right? Am I going the right way around? B. Okay. The other two we have looked at because we did quadratics at the beginning. This must be an x squared. This one, because it's upside down, must be a minus x squared. Okay. Now, we've got more to do on quadratics, so it's not a big problem, but that's why I said use your calculator. Alright? If we've done a lot of this, I would have expected you to be able to do it. But first off, this is a minus x squared because it's upside down. Now, just like a linear function, it crosses up here. That will still be the c, so it'll be a positive value. This one will be a negative value of c. So we're looking at x squared but has no value of c. This one is a negative x squared, so it could be that one. None of the others are. So actually, d has to be y equals 3, because it crosses at 3, minus x squared. And then this one has to be a positive x squared with a minus something, which would suggest that one.
Hey!
Okay. Okay. Now again, I wouldn't have necessarily given you that question and expected you to do it without a calculator yet, but it was a nice one to throw in and say, you've got a calculator that can graph it, graph them. Do you remember? Right. Now, the equation is 3x plus 4y equals 12. Now, we have gone through how to do these things. Remember, when you've got x and y coordinates go together. Now, I would straight away go for b, the coordinates are going to be 0 something. And for A, the coordinates are going to be something 0. Okay? So,
Right.
so make sure you get that the right way around. So,
I got 0, 3, 4. Anybody hear that? Or is that just me?
an airplane. Right. X and Y. Now those coordinates are the X and the Y coordinates, therefore we can use them. So for point A, the Y value is 0. So I can use this and say 3x plus 4 times 0 has to equal 12. What's 4 times 0? 0. So I can kind of forget that, say 3x's has to be 12. So x has to be 4. So I've got 4 there. Do you notice how I'm writing it on my diagram? Just because it might help me with another point. Alright? B is the same idea, although this time x is 0. So 3 times 0 plus 4y equals 12. 3 times 0 is nothing, so 4y equals 12, which means y must be 3. So I'm going to put that there. Unfortunately, if you've got them the wrong way, that could suggest you don't know how to write your coordinates. You've done the y first, then the x, which I can't give you the marks. Alright, M. Remember, M is just the midpoint. So I've written it on here. So I've got 0 to 4. The middle of 0 to 4 is 2. So I've got 2. And just check. I've got 1 and 3. Yeah, that makes sense. So 2 there. And this one, 0. What is it? 1.5. 0 and 3 is 1.5. Okay, so for that M, if your other points' coordinates are wrong, but your midpoint is correct for your two coordinates, you can have the follow through for that final question only. Okay. But again, can you get someone to check that what you did was genuinely the midpoint? Right. Shh, come on. It now says the hard one. Find the equation of the line through the origin, which is perpendicular to the line out. Well, actually, because it says two pieces of information. Perpendicular to the line out, we know that means something. And the fact that it says through the origin means something else. So if we're looking for an equation of the line, well, if it's through the origin, that means it must be y equals mx plus 0. So you're going to end up with we don't write the plus 0. I'm not going to penalise you for doing the plus 0, but you wouldn't write it. So we are just looking for an equation of the form y equals mx. Right, which makes it so much easier. Although, we don't actually know what the equation of line L is yet. So the equation of line L, well, we actually don't need to know the equation. We just need to know the gradient. So forget that. What is the gradient of the first line? Well, again, because I put my values on there, so good, it's negative, and it's 3 to 0, minus 3, that's the rise, the run is 4. So it's negative 3 over 4, so that one's negative 3 over 4. So therefore this one needs to be y equals 4 over 3x would be your answer. That's your answer. Again, if your coordinates were wrong, you will have a follow through because your gradient of your first line will be wrong. Therefore, your reciprocal gradient will be wrong, but if it follows through, you can have the mark. Okay? So you can see how keeping on going, even if you've made a mistake, you should only be penalised once for a mistake.
I agree.
Okay, in these type of questions.
What is it? -4 3?
Well, there are 3 marks. Okay, so I would say if you put -4/3x, exactly that. Well, if you knew that that was -3/4 and you still put -4/3, you would lose a mark, so you'd only get 2. Okay. Yeah.
Can you come check mine?
Just to say then, so 3 marks. Basically, if you've got y = 4/3x, you'll get 3 marks. It's more a case of do you lose them now. So if you've got anything other than +0, alright, you lose a mark. If you've got something other than 4/3 and it doesn't follow from your coordinates, you lose the other 2 marks. If you've got -4/3, for instance, when we should have 4/3, you gain 1 back. Does that make sense? So if your gradient doesn't follow through from your coordinates at all, you don't get any marks, right? Although, if you put whatever, if that bit's wrong, completely wrong, even with your coordinates, but there's a +0 or nothing, you still get the 1 mark for that. Right? So the +0 or equivalent, therefore nothing, you can have 1 mark regardless of anything else.
Regardless.
Does that make sense? Okay. 5 minutes, let's see how we do. So we'll have to do this quicker and you can review it afterwards rather than chatting too much about it. Same idea though. Point A, B, C, find the coordinates of point C. Well again, I would put, well that's 3, that's at 9, the middle of 3 and 9, 6.
Oh, fabulous! I want to.
So I've got 6, and then I'm at -3 and 1, so -1. As I said, let's not chat too much, let's get through this quickly. Find the equation of the line perpendicular to line AB. Again, perpendicular, so we need to know the gradient of this one. So the gradient of the first line, well, again, because we put the values in our diagram, we can see that the drop is 4, so it's -4, and the run is from 3 to 9 is 6. So we have -4/6. So the gradient of the perpendicular line will be 3/2. Do you understand? That is -2/3, just in case. Or -4/6, you can keep it, and then this one would be 6/4. That's fine. You don't have to simplify. Okay. What we do need to know though is that this line is perpendicular. All right. The only information we've got, we can't really carry it on, but we do know it also goes through point 6 - 1. Okay, so we've got that plus C. It goes through the same midpoint. Okay, therefore when x is 6, y is -1. So we've got -1 is 3/2 times 6 plus C. So that would be 9. 3/2 times 6, you happy with that? I did the divide by 2 first, so 6 divided by 2 is 3, 3 times 2 is 9. Plus C, so actually C is going to be a negative value, which makes sense if my line's going to come all the way down here. So that would say that C will be x minus 10. Yeah. So you're happy with that? How do I get from 9 to -1? I have to subtract 10. It says, right, this question, by the way, find the distance PQ is something we'll do next lesson, distance stuff. We do need to fill that gap.
What?
So, what was this out of? 25. Did I add it in? Okay. So it should be out of 23 then, yeah? I think because remember I told you in the test I forgot that I mentioned not to do that one.
Mr. Fontaine, we had one wrong. It was one. I wrote the answer on top.